What's up, Doctor Who fans? Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We have two videos of comic books transformed left before 2023 is over, and I couldn't think of a better person to spend the second to last episode with than my good friend Mike Bongiorno over there. Mike, welcome to the show.
It's wonderful to be here.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man. You know what? Mike and I, boy, we've been hanging out a lot at the end of the year, huh?
Yeah. Very
We
good.
There's two episodes over on his channel, Pop Culture Man Children. Do you want to explain what those are, Mike?
Yeah. We've got this week, you came on to talk about everyone's favorite New Year's Eve movie, Ghostbusters 2. And then next week, the first episode of the new year will be an episode on Gremlins 2.
Yes. That was a fun time, and I'm actually gonna go listen to that Ghostbusters one after this. But I feel like I've brought you over to seduce you or something into my little, I'm actually in my bedroom and I recording in here because I wanted everyone to see my Star Wars tree, and then I wanted to show you this Christmas gift my mom got me yesterday.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Have you ever seen one of these before?
No, what does it do?
It plays the music and stuff. I don't know if you can hear it over my headphones.
I can hear it.
Yeah.
Well, stop being a copyright strike.
Yeah, right. But what's cool about this thing is it also does dialogue. Things to do, places to go. But the weird thing is it just plays dialogue from the fourth Doctor. I don't know why it doesn't do any of the other Doctors.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, since we're showing toys that Santa got us.
Do it.
Oh. I got this bad boy.
Oh man, Hallmark did a killing with us this year, huh?
No, this is like the from the classic what do you call it? A classic Trek toys, toy line.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I don't know, maybe the scale isn't right. It's pretty big.
That is awesome. Yeah. So for those of you that are just listening on the podcast, you probably wonder what the hell are me and Mike talking about. I have a TARDIS that my mom just bought me from Hallmark that spins around, and then Mike just busted out the original Enterprise from the Kirk era, the original series. So that was pretty awesome, man.
It's my mom also bought me.
It's so appropriate that Mike's show is called Pop Culture Man Children because we are true man children right now. Yeah. So anyway, today we're here. We've been covering a whole lot of Doctor Who on this channel, and I think that's great because my passion for Doctor Who has been reignited. What about you, man?
Lovely. Yeah, Doctor Who is it's a big fandom, but it's not the kind of fandom, for me at least, that's like a fire that's always burning, because it's on forever, and it skips years. So it's there'll be Doctor Who times where it's you got to get into it and really enjoy it, and then you'll have a year where there's no Doctor Who and you kind of just have to go back to the rest of your life.
Yes, and we're in one of those times right now. The fire is burning pretty damn brightly. We just got our new Doctor, Shutigawa, who is the 15th Doctor. And that's in the Christmas special, The Church on Ruby Road. So just right off the bat, Mike, did you enjoy this special?
I did enjoy it. Okay. I very much did enjoy it. I've seen it twice. When I first watched it, I was kind of not sure about it, although I was also in a bad mood. And I think critics don't say that enough. Sometimes Roger Ebert would be like, I hated this movie. And it's well, Roger, were you just having a bad day? You know what I mean? I've it's very charming. I think I wanted something different from it, to be honest with you. But I do like it.
Okay, well, why don't you tell me what you wanted from it?
I think I wanted to see Shutigawa do, I don't know, more stuff. Yeah. And sort of in the tradition of the pilot of the reboot, Russell T Davies' first episode, it's really an episode about the companion. The companion is the protagonist.
Right, Rose is the protagonist. Yeah. Well, when you say do more stuff, like what kind of stuff? Like use a sonic screwdriver and.
I guess I wanted to know him more, but as I was watching again, I realized this is, in a way, it's resetting back to the mystery of Doctor Who. Who is this guy? And we're seeing him through Ruby's eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the idea, right? That was the initial idea behind the title of the show, right? Doctor Who. It's like he
Yeah,
just calls himself the Doctor. I kind of had this like Abbott and Costello, who's on first situation with my 7-year old. She's like, "Why is it called Doctor Who?" And I was like,
yeah,
"It's because he never says what his real name is." But yeah, I feel like this is a great jumping on point if you've never watched the show.
I agree.
And then you said that you kind of wish that he did more. For me, I thought that he did a couple of interesting things. You'll have to tell me because you're much more knowledgeable of Doctor Who at this point. Like he seemed like he was really keen on learning things. Like he wanted to learn the language of the ropes that were in the
Yeah,
Goblin ship, and I'm trying to think what else. Like he they talk about magic and stuff, but he was like talking about how he was really interested in language, and then he like invented these gloves.
yes.
I like. Does the other versions of the doctors invent stuff too?
Uh, not as I'm trying to think. Once in a while, you'll have something like that, but that did feel like it felt very Russell T Davies.
Yeah,
Um, but I think he had, depending on the kind of doctor that it's going to be, their sort of first story sometimes is it's them sort of getting used to their new body, getting
yeah,
used to their new, everything. Peter Capaldi's first episode, he's kind of like he kind of has amnesia. He doesn't really know what's going on. They didn't do that with this. With this, we don't even know how much time was between the last special and this episode. We see him like he's kind of, I guess, following Ruby because he's got this idea about what's happening, but he's dancing in a club, so he's kind of like knows who he is. And unlike Capaldi or even like Matt Smith, this doctor seems to have a sort of wide-eyed enthusiasm for the world that we haven't seen really in a while.
yeah. Well, there's that one sequence, right, where like we should establish right away that Ruby seems to be plagued with bad luck. Like all these
Yeah,
things kind of fall around her. She's like missing appointments and stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's this one like very precariously set up snowman that's essentially already falling off of a building, and these goblins that are very gremlin like,
Very gremlin-like.
they set it up to where it's going to fall on her.
Yeah,
He ends up having the snowman fall on him. He at first kind of chastises this woman for having a baby out in a stroller,
right.
and so that's a little bit of fun. I think that any version of the doctor would have done that. But then like a cop comes by, and the guy says your girl, or the doctor says you're going to propose to your girlfriend in like 3 days, and she's going to say yes.
Yeah,
And he
yeah.
does almost like this Sherlock Holmes kind of deduction of like, well,
Yes,
okay, so what do you think of that?
I like that a lot. I also, you got to remember that it's not just a first story for a new doctor. It's also a Christmas special, and the
Right.
Christmas specials tend to have a certain whimsy to them.
Yeah.
So I think you were getting a little bit of that with that cop. But it was an interesting deduction. I mean, he says the sonic screwdriver pinged, and it's
Yeah.
because it noticed it detected a 2-carat diamond, which was in your pocket, which means it's probably a ring. He said, I deducted that it was a female because what guy would want a diamond or something like that. And then he says, like, and I know you really love her, and she's going to say yes because the sales start next week, but you couldn't wait.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very Holmes
Yeah.
in a way.
And it would have been funny because, of course, the doctor has to be super intelligent, and we have to have a lot of confidence in him. But it would have been funny if the guy was like, "That's not true. I actually,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
I live by myself in my mother's basement or something." Like. But no, that was a fun little moment. We mentioned how these creatures, the goblins that are in this show, are like gremlins,
A
and
lot,
I
I
think
think a lot. It makes me wonder if they were gremlins in the original script and they were told to not do that. Like legally, you shouldn't do it because it is a Christmas episode and Gremlins is a Christmas movie, and they act like gremlins. They look like gremlins. I mean, they're called goblins,
yeah,
but they're about the size of gremlins. They look very much like gremlins. They're green. They cause mischief.
right,
I mean, for much like gremlins, like before we really get a good look at them, we see their hands coming into the
right,
frame, like knocking things down and like cutting her bag so all her groceries fall out.
Right. You always see their little hand and they make some kind of goblin-y noise. Gremlin
Yeah,
is like, yeah,
they even sound like gremlins the way they
Right.
talk.
Right. Exactly. It's funny too because I think the very first thing you see besides this sort of like prologue with Ruby's mother is Ruby being interviewed for a show that's sort of like one of those like DNA test shows
Yeah,
where they tell you your background. And the woman that they interview, she eventually gets bad luck and the goblins go to kill her.
yeah,
Like her tree, it's actually pretty gruesome kind of scene because her
yeah,
Christmas tree goes to fall on her, and like it looks like the stars gonna go into her eye.
yeah.
That's a very Gremlins thing, and it's funny because the woman that interviews Ruby, her name's Davina McCall,
Uh-huh.
and she's apparently some kind of like British host for like a TV
Oh,
show.
so she's somebody that we would know, that they would know, and that's fun.
Yeah, because did you notice like the doctor kind of goes, he's like, "Merry Christmas, Davina McCall," like he says it like that.
Now it makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's
yeah.
really interesting.
It's
Um,
funny, like, you've never watched, Big Brother in your life, right?
no.
No, it's because 'cause you're a normal person, not like me, yeah. Because like, they have a host, Julie Chen, who,
Uh-huh.
like, her nickname is, like, Chenbot because she has, like, no personality.
Uh-huh.
So I could see it being like the doctor, he'd be like, "Merry Christmas, Julie Chen," you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Now it makes sense to me how
Yeah.
much, because they do say her name like 5 times.
Right, right. So, what did you think of that prologue before that scene?
Well, we've already got some mystery, right? I mean,
Mhm.
who is the hooded figure that dropped Ruby off? Who's Ruby's mother? Who is Ruby's neighbor that knows what a TARDIS is?
Mm.
Um, it made me think about, um, again, like I keep thinking through the lens of Russell T Davies and what I liked about when he was the showrunner before. And this whole idea of coincidence is not new to him. It's something that he seems to be obsessed with in his writing in big and little ways. In his first series, you had like the bad wolf thing. Why did they
Mhm.
keep saying bad wolf? And then in the season with Donna, you had the bees. Everyone keeps talking about bees and where are the bees going.
Mm.
Even like this is really nerdy, but the first Doctor Who thing that Russell T Davies ever did was he wrote a Doctor Who novel about the seventh Doctor, and in that novel, there's a character who I forget her first name, but her last name is Tyler, like Rose Tyler. And,
Oh.
and he said to him in his head canon that it was a cousin to Rose Tyler.
Oh,
So like
cool.
he's super interested in tying things up in weird little ways that aren't exactly like overt, but just show like that there's a sort of like wonder to the universe that's constantly weaving things in and out. Even
Oh.
the idea that she is what they call a foundling in this, and that's what
Mhm.
the Doctor is as well.
Yes, yes, I'm really glad you brought that up because isn't that essentially referencing the Timeless Child?
Yeah, and I was really surprised because um there was a feeling that whoever the new show was going to kind of like not decanonize, but move on very quickly from the last showrunner and all of his decisions. But not only have they continued it in the 3 specials that had David Tennant, it's continuing again and seems to be informing the Doctor's character. The Doctor still seems to be working through everything that they learned through the Flux story and before that they
Yes.
were basically just abandoned by who knows who.
Yeah.
I have my own feelings. I don't know if there is parents. I think it's probably more like Anakin. I think like maybe time made him or whatever.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
probably.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it is interesting. I was really surprised to see that Russell T Davies is still interested in like having the Doctor think about those things.
Yeah, yeah. You made me think of an interesting point that like when it comes to the canon of things that are decades old, like 60 years old, like the Doctor, or I
Yeah.
often think about comic books that have been around, like, Superman's been around since the 30s and stuff. It's almost like a universe has been created and we just essentially go to it.
Uh-huh.
Now some creators they take it on and they make significant changes, because I think they have kind of hubris. They're like, oh, I'm going to change this for the better, or I'm going to make my mark. But then other people kind of like use the details to tell their own story. And it seems like maybe Russell T Davies, based on what you're saying, he doesn't want to radically change anything. He just kind of wants to modernize it. Like he doesn't want to change what Doctor Who is or the history before it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, remember, he is the person who brought it back from the dead. We talk about it being on for 60 years, but there was a 15-year gap between essentially the original show ending with the seventh Doctor,
Right.
and then it being rebooted with the ninth Doctor, that one little TV movie in the middle. And Russell T Davies was the one who brought it back, and we don't realize, like, he could have just started fresh. He could have really rebooted it. It was his, he was the one who respected Doctor Who enough that he was like, no, I want to make sure everything that happened did happen.
Yes. That's a very like comic book type thing. Because often with comic books, they'll start with like a fresh new number one issue, and it'll seem like it's like a new take on the story, but there's always this homage to what came before. And even when they literally rewrite history and stuff with like something like Crisis on Infinite Earths, they still will eventually go back to everything that's come beforehand.
Right. And I think it's a delicate balance, because you do want to give a little bit of that continuity pornography for the diehard fans, but too much of that and it becomes alienating. I feel like Stephen Moffat's era, every episode would have like 5 references to an old villain, an old character.
Yeah.
And sometimes to the detriment of what the story they were telling. It seems like story-wise, this series now seems to be looking forward. I mean, this is a new Doctor. They introduced new characters. They introduced these new little goblins. The Doctor's thinking in a different way. The Doctor's acting in a different way. So it feels fresh. Like you said, I think if you were like, when can I get into Doctor Who? I think right now is the time you could. But at the same time, it's referring back to what just happened.
Right. Exactly. He did this awesome joke a couple of times in the last recording where you're talking about this old British man, white British man drinking tea, and then he'd find out an announcement about the Doctor just spit the tea out.
Yeah.
Did that old British man essentially have a heart attack with this episode and die?
Well, it is. Well, when you see the first Black Doctor in a club dancing wearing a dress, I'm sure he very much had a heart attack, and his wife had to call 999 and fucking.
I like that you were regionally appropriate for that.
Absolutely. I was alienate people by saying 911. But yeah, well, that kind of leads me to something else I'm interested in, which is, it seems that this Doctor is not going to have an outfit like every other Doctor. Mm-hmm. And some Doctors like Capaldi and I said the last couple of Doctors have had like 2 different outfits, almost like an away team uniform. But it seems like from what we've seen in the previews and stuff, this Doctor has a different outfit in every episode, like a real person. But there is a flair, and there's a sort of like sort of a non-binary sort of like wildness to it.
Agreed. So you don't think that sort of that tannish, orangey kind of coat isn't going to be like his coat?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. The toy makers will eventually have to like pin down something.
Right.
This is what the toy is. This is what the Build-A-Bear is going to be.
right.
But it seems like even from this episode, he wears a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
By the way, I should say, I don't know if you read this, but Russell T Davies, he had a partner for a long time who sadly passed away.
Oh.
And he supposedly, the way that the Doctor meets Ruby, where he grabs her drink, that's how he met his partner.
Oh.
He wanted to homage his relationship in this episode.
That's sweet. Jeez, Louise. Yeah, it's funny because I don't know how to say this without like coming out in a hard, weird way. I've always been okay with diversifying characters and especially having like new characters that are non-white, non-cis
Yeah,
male characters because we need more of those because it's so interesting. Like if you just go back even just 10 years, like there's been so much progress within 10 years to
yeah, yeah.
have more female characters. um so I'm okay with the doctor being a black man, and essentially he I think he's gay or whatever he is in this, and um like I thought that I would have more of a problem with that because you know the doctor for the longest time was a white man, and the show was a certain way, and now it's just like it seems like a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But I have to say that this episode was like so charming and magical that I just was like, who gives a shit about like
Right.
the way that this was beforehand? It
Right.
still has the framework of it. This guy is so charming as the doctor that like it doesn't matter. Like you're
Right.
only gonna dislike this guy because you have like an agenda to dislike.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing about the show is, look, people get stuck in their own errors. People get stuck in their favorite doctors, their favorite, authors. I used to work with someone who didn't like any of the New Who, like loved the Fourth Doctor, loved the Fifth Doctor, like everything in the modern era. He didn't like it all.
Yeah.
And well, me and this person disagreed a great deal about a lot of things, but he was always upset about different changes and stuff. I think the thing that's essential to Doctor Who and the reason why it's 60 years old and hasn't run its course really is that the show regenerates like the character regenerates. But like you said, there's a framework. It's the Doctor, a companion, and they're traveling around in the TARDIS. That's the basic thing. And that framework really is malleable. And you can put a lot of different things in that.
Yeah. Exactly. I keep bringing it back to comics, and it's because the channel is called Comic Books Transformed. But these characters have been around longer than the Doctor, and yet they're still kind of consistently the same age. What's cool about Doctor Who is that he's able to regenerate, so you can always recast the actor. With comics, essentially, they just kind of keep the character within like a certain frame of time, where it's like the same 5 years.
Yes.
But it's essentially the same thing, and that's why you have this longevity. It's not like because it's almost too abrupt when you start the story over and you like recast everybody or restart everything, and so you lose people. It's funny because like you and I, we've covered so many different franchises, right? We've covered like He-Man and Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers, and all of these things. They all restart essentially, but they just kind of keep those core elements.
Right. But Doctor Who is unique in that it basically maintains its canon.
Right.
Some things get shifted, some things get, like there's this concept of soft canon. Some things kind of get like, we're not going to mention that the Doctor says he's half human in the movie. We're not going to mention like, a lot of the just weird things that are brought up once and then never come back again.
Right.
But nothing. We've never had a start. We've never had a hard start. Whereas like with and I guess Power Rangers is a little like that too, actually, right?
Yeah.
Power Rangers, it's the same continuity, isn't it?
For the most part, I think maybe one or two of the shows are like a different continuity, but I think they kind of say that that's another universe. They don't even say it's like the main universe. But in like Beast Morphers is like the second to most recent one, and in that one they reference like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and stuff.
So let me ask you a question because this is something that I was actually just thinking about yesterday.
Sure.
I'm watching this anime called Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury. Have you seen that or heard of it?
No, I think I've only seen one Gundam, and it was like the main one that really made the big splash in the US. Do you know which one that is? Is it just called Mobile Suit Gundam, the first one?
Well, there's the first one's in the 70s. But
Okay.
I think the big, perhaps there's one in the 90s that got really big here.
Yeah, right. That
Perhaps
one.
that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So what's interesting about Gundam, right, is that there's like 3 or 4 different timelines. So some shows, so there are multiple shows in each timeline, but then there are also just like one-offs. The one I'm watching now, The Witch from Mercury, is its own everything, its own history, its own lore, its own everything. It has like small visual references to the overall series.
Yeah.
Um, and it has Gundams. The idea that there are these big robots called Gundams, and I was thinking, how freeing is that to be like, look, we've got an aesthetic, right, and we've got a vibe. We've got this basic idea of giant robots that you could get into and fight each other. And
Right.
you're going to want to see robots fighting each other, so that will always be in there some way.
Right.
But within that framework, you could do everything. And it made me think about other franchises. Like, what if there was a Star Wars movie that was not in the timeline that we know? It's called Star Wars. There are
Right.
lightsabers. I mean, this is a little bit what I liked about the Visions series.
Yep.
Because some of those episodes were in their own continuity. You know, I don't know. I've talked about this a lot. The tyranny of continuity, and I blame Marvel a lot for it.
Yes.
But how interesting would it be if more series were just like, yeah, this is a completely different thing, but it's the same basic elements.
Yeah, yeah. You know, my co-host Brian, if he was here, I think he'd probably reference Final Fantasy at this point.
Yeah,
Because like isn't like with Final Fantasy, it's like it's not the same continuity ever, but there's like similar trappings in like each
yeah, right.
game.
Yeah, yeah. I think once in a while, like one will follow another, but
Yeah.
for the most part, yeah, it's just the concept. It's the
Yeah.
concept keeps getting remade, and the title, and there's something so freeing to that creatively.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Like with Star Wars, they've even had this thing where it's like a comic where like it's almost like a what if for Star Wars, and they do different versions of it. Like, what if this had happened? Like, what if Darth Vader had not died when he killed the
Or
Emperor?
yeah, or did you ever see the comic that was based on the earliest draft?
Oh yeah, that's another one. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
how cool is that? Because it
Yeah,
still looks like Ralph McQuarrie, right?
yeah,
Ralph McQuarrie, you need the Ralph McQuarrie visual aesthetic.
right.
That's it. All you need is that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree. And honestly,
Now there are nerds watching this with their tea going.
yeah, yeah. Well, I like the fact that you were like saying, like, oh, I was thinking about this yesterday and I wanted to talk to you about it. Because it's like, you know, we're with our loved ones and stuff during Christmas, but this is the shit that's actually going through our head, like right now. Like, oh, I can't wait till I can talk about Doctor Who, you know? Yeah, hi, Mom. I hope you have a good Christmas. But just to kind of bring it back to Doctor Who, you know, let's do a little bit of fantasy booking.
Sure.
So, fantasy booking for this, we're trying to speculate what's the significance with Ruby Sunday? Like, why is she special? You kind of said that maybe it's like a thing like, oh, no. You were saying that the doctor is like Anakin, that like time made him.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think might be her thing? Do you think it's something completely new?
I do think it's something completely new, but that won't stop the fans online from making all sorts of theories that will not be true. Like,
Right.
oh, her mom's the Valiard.
Right.
Her mom is, or her mom's the master, or the neighbor's the master.
Right.
I don't know. I certainly we'll find out in the finale of the season, right? The season proper will begin in spring of 2024. So you've got a little bit of time. Probably it'll be weaved throughout that series or season, and then it'll end. You know, I think we'll finally find out eventually.
Yeah, it'll be kind of like that first season or series, right? Because they used to call it series for the British version.
In the UK, they refer what we call seasons, they call a series.
Right. So in that first series with Christopher Eccleston, the Rose arc, the Bad Wolf arc, is like that first series with him, right? So I kind of feel like it'll be something like that too.
Yeah, it's gonna come back.
Yeah, I wanted to just like kind of bring up one last thing about this episode. I really, really okay. I thought it was like a very tight story from when she's having all these little accidents. The doctor shows up, then the baby gets kidnapped, and he rescues her and the baby. That was all fun and real tight. And then all of a sudden, there's kind of this lull, and I'm like, there's still like 20
Yeah,
minutes left of the show. What are they going to do? And then it like it sort of meanders for a little bit with
yeah.
like I mean you were into comedy and stuff. What do you call that kind of comedy where like people are trying to like cover up something and so they're awkwardly like moving around?
Oh, like
Is it
a comedy of manners.
yeah, where they're like, "Oh, look over here." Meanwhile, someone's like
Right,
moving
right, right,
something
right.
over. There's
Yeah,
a lot of that going on with Ruby's foster mother.
yeah.
And then there's this sort of like a little bit awkward uh you know what's the word when you kind of explain everything, what's that called, starts with a D.
Exposition.
Yeah, the exposition starts with the E, Jesus Christ. But there's some awkward exposition where she's like, well, you were my favorite one and the
Yeah,
reason why I have 33 kids is because of you.
yeah, yeah.
But then there's this great sequence where Ruby's missing and then time has changed. I really
Yeah.
love everything from the moment Ruby is gone till when he rescues her.
Yeah, and it felt a little bit like they were channeling "It's a Wonderful Life,"
Right,
the
exactly.
Christmas classic,
Right.
because her mother, her adoptive mother, and her grandmother, both are much worse off without her. Like the mother's like this loving, caring person,
Right.
but then when without Ruby, she's just fostering kids for the money, and she's miserable, and
Yeah.
it's really interesting. I do agree. It's got a weird plotting.
Hmm.
And everything with like a more typical Doctor Who episode would be like we get on the Goblin ship. We run around, we deal with the goblins. He has like a conversation with the Goblin King. He tries to outsmart them. Like really, it's just like the goblins are there. They steal a baby. They go. They have that musical number, which I liked.
Right.
And then, like you said, they're back, and then they're just like establishing stuff again. It was a lot of establishing. I guess I think like her mother and grandmother would be a part of it, because that's another Russell D Davies thing. He always liked to have the companion's family be a large part of the story and somebody that you would come back to.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then at the end, they go and they steal her, and then he goes and saves her and brutally kills the Goblin King.
Yes. 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 I really want to show this to my daughter, who I said this in one of our previous recordings. She's not able to watch Star Wars because she had a nightmare about Chewbacca. And
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, the goblins are more cute than they are scary. So I think she'll be able to handle that.
yeah.
And I was like, she'll even be able to handle the big one. But then essentially he gets skewered by
By
a
the Catholic
church.
Church, yes.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, that might be a little rough for her.
If didn't it feel a lot like The Hobbit?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Especially like the Peter Jackson movies of
yeah,
The
yeah,
Hobbit.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, essentially the church comes up through him like a chest burster out of Alien. He's like,
Yeah,
oh.
yeah. It's pretty violent, and
Yeah.
I mean they want to eat a baby.
Yes. But it's all done so tongue in cheek and stuff. They're like singing,
Yeah,
like making baby scones and stuff. Yeah.
right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much. Did you have anything else you want to say about this episode?
Gosh, I don't know. Let me look at my copious notes. Oh, another reference of Mavity instead of
Yes.
gravity.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. So
I
they're
like
sticking with
that.
that.
Every Doctor. Look, I think every Doctor Who writer from here on in should
Yes.
adhere to this joke. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
It's like have you ever seen any of the Gamera movies?
No, but I know the Gamma is a big deal too.
Yeah, he's sort of like second to Godzilla
Right.
as like a giant kaiju. In a lot of the Gamera movies, turtles don't exist. They like there's a because he's a giant turtle basically, or she's a giant turtle basically. But like no one ever goes, oh, that's a turtle. So like it's a world where there aren't turtles.
Okay.
It's a
I
very
never knew
weird.
this.
It's very odd. but it's sort of like that. Like I like the idea of like, yeah, it's now in the world of Doctor Who, it's Mavity, not gravity.
Yeah, she's yeah. I mean, it's this great little joke, and you know that like eventually down the road there'll be a showrunner who is a slave to continuity, and he'll do a whole arc where they fix that.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, where like Davros will go back and kidnap Sir Isaac Newton or something.
Yeah, yeah.
It
No.
is gravity or gravity. You know? Yeah. Um. No, no, I love that joke too. I'm just trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to include. I think I hit all the notes that I wanted to.
Did you
Uh,
see
good.
the it wasn't on Disney Plus, but did you see the preview online that was released that was like this season on Doctor Who? And it had little clips of stuff coming.
No, just at the end of this episode, they just essentially showed the doctor.
Yeah.
I don't think they showed any actual clips of anything happening.
Yeah, it just said new doctor, new home,
Yeah.
Disney Plus.
Ugh,
Disney
yeah.
is so they're really involved. They love it.
Yes.
Okay, so it was just interesting. It was very little clips of it seems like there's gonna be an episode in the 70s because you see them wearing like 70s clothes. Um
Nice.
you see a clip of him hugging Rose from the other special. So that character is going to come back at some point.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Rose Tyler?
no, not Rose Tyler. Sorry, Rose.
Oh,
Daughter.
Rose. Yeah, Donna's daughter.
Yeah,
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Oh, and there was another transgender person in this episode too.
yeah, right. Because Ruby's in like a band or something, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, they're definitely wanting to
What,
include everybody
what did
in
you
this
think of
here.
Ruby and the actress who plays her, Millie Gibson?
Well, okay. I didn't dislike her. I didn't think there was anything bad about her. I think she was charming too. I just kind of think that every other character around her kind of had more
Okay.
personality.
Okay.
What about you?
Um, she doesn't have a lot to do, but I did
Right.
find her charming because
Right.
like to be a good companion, right? Like you have to be ready to go for it. Like the doctor will choose you as companion if you have a sense of justice and if you're up for anything. And the fact that she like jumps on the thing, the fact that she has a sort of fun disposition the whole way through, no matter what's happening. I know I was very charmed by her.
Yes. Yeah, and actually, I really loved the end where the TARDIS is on the street, like she's kind of looking for the doctor, and then she kind of hesitates, and then her neighbor like kind of points to the TARDIS, and she goes on it. I really
Yeah,
like the way that sequence was done with like the music and everything,
yeah,
and then it ends like perfectly with like she walks in the TARDIS, she does the typical like oh it's bigger on the inside,
yeah,
and then he says I'm the doctor. It's really is a perfect way to end that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, no, I thought that the actress did a good job. It's so funny that we're talking about we both use the word charming a lot in this review. And it's so funny the difference between like the Doctor Who experience in the fandom and the other stuff that I review on here with Brian,
Yeah.
because like one of the things that you guys should go check out too is our review of Rebel Moon. And I don't think we could use charming for anything in that movie.
That's really interesting. Uh, there's no charm. There's no. Never mind.
Mike's not even going to take the bait for that one. It's just like
Uh,
never mind. So I guess you're not going to watch Rebel Moon, huh?
uh, I've been burned by Snyder so many times.
Yes, yes, yes.
I always say he makes the greatest trailers for the worst
Hmm.
movies. So
Yes,
he's burned so many times. I've been like, this is gonna be the one that's good, and then
yeah.
for me at least, it never happens. So
Did
I
you
don't
ever
know.
did you ever watch his Patrick Willems or the Patrick Willems video on him?
Yes.
I thought that was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Patrick Williams is great. Yeah, so man, we're talking about other shows and stuff. I wanted to say to everyone that's watching, if this is your first time watching Comic Books Transformed, that'd be great. A great late Christmas gift for you to subscribe, and we'd love to be with you for 2024. But you should also check out Pop Culture Man Children, which Mike is going to explain now.
Pop Culture Man Children is a podcast available anywhere podcasts are found, including YouTube. It is a podcast about movies, TV, video games, comics, sometimes everything. It has a great sort of nostalgia bend to it, but it also looks at current things. I'm proud of it because it is a non-toxic environment. Um, I once had a listener write to me, and he was like, I was really surprised that you guys are so progressive and sort of open minded, given the way that you sound. And I was like, is it because I have a stupid sounding New York accent? Like you're expecting racism to come out of my mouth?
Right, right,
Like,
right.
hey, what the fuck? I'm for any,
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Hey, that Ray, she's what the fuck's I can't even think of the
She's not a
suit.
Mary Sue, fucking
That
you a
Mary
Mary
Stu.
Sue. She
Yeah. That's not the way Luke would have done it.
Right, right.
Right,
So,
right, right.
no, it's a very inclusive, lovely place, and right now we've got an episode on Ghostbusters 2 where Pete is in, and then Gremlins 2, and we've got a whole new year coming of fun stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I always enjoy having you on, and I really love going on to your show too, Mike. Brian and I probably don't do as good a job as you on your channel, but we also try to be like a safe space here. And, we absolutely do try to not be toxic. So,
Right,
uh,
right.
I guess going into 2024, we're just going to keep that going and keep things positive. And Mike, I'd love to have you back on here to talk about Doctor Who when the show comes back too.
Yeah, sure. If I'm
Awesome.
alive in spring, let's do it.
Yes, yes, yeah. That's a whole nother thing. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, we'll see you guys real soon.